Welcome to the Digital Healthcare Experience, brought to you by Taylor Healthcare. Subscribe now and stay on the forefront of the digital healthcare revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Healthcare Experience podcast presented by Taylor Healthcare. I'm your host, Chris Civitarice, and today we're joined by Dr. Danielle McCamey, acute care nurse practitioner and assistant dean for strategic partnerships at the Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. Her dedication and scholarly pursuits are centered around propelling diversity and development within the nursing workforce, and as a visionary in her field, Dr. McCamey is reshaping the landscape of nursing through her groundbreaking nonprofit that she founded, DNPs of Color. Through this initiative, she created a thriving community of DNP-prepared nurses of color, catalyzing a surge of representation within the nursing profession. Dr. McCamey, welcome, and it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, we're going to be talking about that nonprofit that you started, DNPs of Color. And to kick us off, I'm hoping you can share a little bit about your background and your journey in founding DNPs of Color and what inspired you to take the step and some of the gaps that you might have identified in the nursing practice that led you down that road.
Oh man, that's a loaded introduction. Right? So, starting from the beginning, I was the only Black woman in my DNP program and really wanting to have a community that understood my lived experience, because doctoral studies is hard for anyone. But sometimes having those feelings of isolation or like you don't necessarily belong or have any other folks that are representative of you or your community to kind of connect with. And so I decided to create a Facebook group, because back then Facebook groups were the thing. I think they still are. And that community grew exponentially in a short period of time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a gap. And when I started looking across the different nursing professional organizations, I was like, we are definitely meeting a need. One, with the exponential growth of the DNP degree. Matter of fact, it's the 20-year anniversary of the DNP degree, October 25th.
I didn't realize
that. And so there's over 70,000 nurses that have obtained their DNP degree, which outnumbers the PhD degree tremendously. So I was like, okay, we're filling the gap because there's no other organization focused on DNP prepared nurses. And then also just understanding that nursing is a predominantly white profession. And so it's no secret, like most professions struggle with increasing diversity. And so I was like, well, I have a group of folks that identify as, folks of color. Let's just put something together. And so that's how DNPs of Color came to be. And now today we are international, and we are approaching our 4th annual conference, which is like mind-boggling to me. And we are making a tremendous impact in nursing, and it's really, really exciting.
It's fantastic. Congratulations on the just immense success of the program so far. And what always interests me about sort of people's journeys, you are a nurse, you're a businesswoman, you're a leader. Starting a nonprofit from scratch is no small endeavor. So I'm curious, just, if you can, talk a little bit about, that aspect of it and the challenges you might have faced in terms of balancing all those hats and probably many more that you wear.
I definitely have a lot of hats. And the nonprofit world is different. And when the idea first came to me to make it into a nonprofit, I was like, I'm not a business person. Like, I'm an acute care nurse practitioner. I know how to save a life, not save a budget. So it was a lot of learning as we grew. And then also had the opportunity to do a certificate program in nonprofit executive management with Georgetown University. So that helped turn on some of the light bulbs to be effective in the role. And then just understanding the community and the resources and being able to put people in alignment with their skill set that help advance the mission. So with my Clifton strength being a relator, I have a knack for making connections. And a couple of my team members are like, how did you get me to volunteer to do all this stuff? I was like, I'm just leaning in on your skill set and strength. And it just so happens to align with our mission and the things we need to get done. And so it works out for everyone.
And then you kind of blink your eye and you've got all these folks under the tent. I love that. That's
Oh man,
fantastic.
it's such an honor and a privilege to be of service through leadership and to have people actually see the mission and vision and think that it's a good idea and believe in it. Because when you're a founder and you're just conceptualizing everything, it makes sense in your mind. But I'm like, is this going to resonate with people? And it's a resounding yes.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about that mission. So obviously workforce diversity, leadership development, these are some real central themes, I would call it, I guess, to your mission. And going along with that, I know how important mentorship opportunities are, in general, but especially as we start talking about leadership roles in clinical care and nursing and so on and so forth. So can you talk a little bit more about that sort of aspect of the mission around mentorship opportunities and some of the creative ways that you've brought that to bear?
Yes, mentorship is literally the key to success in any endeavor. And it's one of our mission pillars. And one of the key things about this community, there's a lot of organic mentoring that goes on. And so people have this energy of wanting to share and also contribute to people's success, which is, for me, I've been in so many different professional organizations. The energy behind that is like no other. So it's amazing to witness and to see how things just ripple and percolate, and people are so willing to support people's success. So that's the organic mentorship piece. We have a formal program that we are in we just finished our second cohort, and this mentorship program is around mentoring those that need that extra support to turn their DNP project papers into a manuscript ready for publication. So this past spring, we were able to have a cohort of 7 individuals sign on, and 7 actually submitted for publication. So we're actively waiting to hear back for the yes, you've been published. And the way nursing is designed, and especially doctoral nursing, having publication is kind of like the stamp that, like, yes, you are a doctor, you are published. So it's been critically important to launch this program because people have felt that they didn't have the confidence or they weren't well supported to make it to the finish line for publication.
Yeah, I found that really fascinating that there's almost like a reluctance, if you will, for DNP nurses to actually to publish. So the fact that you're encouraging that seems like it's a really sort of big step, not just from sort of the DNPs of color perspective, but just in the industry in general. That seems to be a big gap.
It absolutely is a big gap. And the thing that's unique about DNP prepared nurses and their scholarly work is that it focuses on the local problem and the clinical issues or policy issues that are impacting that community, that are impacting that system, whatever it may be. And so we're able to leverage the evidence and come up with some actionable solutions in real time to see some impact on outcomes. And so having that work published to really amplify the ability to put together projects and large scale initiatives to meet some of the challenges in the now moment is critically important, especially with, technology taking over and really advancing our ability to have access to knowledge and implement that in practice. And then just looking at just historically how knowledge is generated and how long it takes to actually be published from the nursing scientists. It's anywhere from 7 to 14 years. And you
Wow.
think about that, it's like, okay, so by the time it's published, technology has, a new practice guideline has come out, or some of those practices and strategies or frameworks were baked in racism anyway. So it's perpetuating inequity. So there's so many different layers that create a tremendous value for DNP prepared nurses to be involved in generating new knowledge and also navigating some of the local problems that need actionable solutions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never sort of thought of it almost as like a continuum, like over time, where it's not an event, right? Getting, a cohort of 7 to publish. It's this 7 and the next 7 and the next and the next and the next, sort of building, I would imagine, over time, in terms of
Yeah.
that research and that information.
Definitely. And one of the key things that's important about these scholars' work that have joined in on this mentorship program is that a lot of them are focused on communities that have been historically minoritized or under-resourced, and they're coming up with ways to close some of these healthcare inequities, which is, I'm like, we need to publish this because we need solutions now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I have to imagine that now more than ever, I mean, it's just so important because there's been so much press and obviously, the rollback of some of the affirmative action. There seems to be this rise of sort of anti, DEI policies, not just in healthcare, but kind of all over the place. So I'm curious how the sort of recent history here has shifted or shaped focus, urgency around the work that you're doing at DNPs of Color.
I think all the above: shifted, shaped, created urgency to fortify the group and the initiatives, because when you're thinking about, the anti-DEI things, we're really kind of decreasing or eliminating some of the pathways that have been key to bringing those that don't have all the resources available to have access to certain things, especially in regards to education. So for us is ensuring that we're partnering with schools that, like, for example, Hispanic serving institutions, HBCUs, predominantly Black institutions that by design have been historically responsible for diversifying some of the healthcare professions. So looking to partner to see how we can be of service to support them and their initiatives with our network. And when you think about it, there's been a lot of billionaires that have been donating to these institutions. So for me, I'm like, watch where the money goes. And that's kind of where the mission will be pushed. So, when I'm seeing folks pouring into these institutions, there's something to be said that if we can't get it one way, then we have another strategy to focus in on to try and promote the diversity that we desperately need to save lives.
It's really interesting. So what you're describing, I mean, it sounds like, there's DNPs of color, there's the sort of broader, educational, system in this country. There's obviously, sort of other nonprofits and donors and so on and so forth. There's the healthcare, institutions, the hospitals and health systems themselves. This is really, it goes well beyond, sort of just your team at DNPs of Color. This sounds like it has to be a whole sort of, industry-wide, ecosystem-wide effort. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yes. And I love the word ecosystem because everybody has a responsibility and it takes everybody to do the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to get back to something that you brought up around sort of the inequities, right, that we see in healthcare today. And leading up to the conversation here, just kind of cruising around, some of the research. I mean, it doesn't take long to find a Google search about those inequities. I read on Johns Hopkins, Bloomberg School of Health, Public Health, Black women 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related issues than white women. Inequities with everything from childhood immunizations to diabetes rate, heart rate. I mean, it's just everywhere that you look. It's hard not to find inequities. So
Correct.
If we kind of couple this scenario where we've got a climate where DEI efforts are sort of being minimized, and we have this sort of growing health equity gap with patients, how do we sort of bring the philosophies of DNPs of Color, and how do we leverage the work that you're doing and the strategies and solutions to close that gap? What's your perspective on that?
Such a great and important question, because we focus on creating a community that creates the opportunities for us to be in certain places and spaces to influence policy, to influence structures, to influence systems. And having a DNP, a doctorate degree, affords us to be at these tables to weigh in and create change on the more upstream realm. And so with us, it's focusing in on ensuring that these professionals are prepared to be able to speak to the challenges and also the opportunities for change, and to be able to advocate for what communities need. And then also our group serves as a respite, because the work of creating actionable change, especially in the realm of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, is it's tiresome work. And it can be draining, especially for those individuals of color that sometimes are the only one in these different places and spaces of leadership in clinical practice and also in policy realm. So our strategy is to fortify the community where they are, to ensure that they are well equipped, educated, and comfortable and confident to be able to speak to some of the challenges and advocate for change.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think what's really interesting is that, what DNPs of color sort of fills in terms of that needs and the needs in that gap. I've read a whole lot about, what we can be doing at the bedside and sort of, in that real hands-on sort of patient care clinical practice. But what you're describing is actually sort of elevating that conversation to where things like company culture, leadership decisions. I mean, it sounds like, and I'm sure that those are very complementary in nature, but it feels like this has been a gap for some time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about some of the Fortune 500 companies, they say diversity is the success to business, and having taken note on who's at the table, who's not at the table, and are we giving people opportunity to be able to contribute? And are we empowering them with the resources to be able to be successful? I mean, I think that's kind of been the longstanding conversation, is how to balance all of that and to ensure that folks that are advocating for communities of color or advancing health equity, that they have the funds, that they have the power and various resources to get some good work done.
What's been the reaction? I'm curious. You've sat in those rooms. You've sat at those tables. I'm curious about your experience in terms of sort of getting the reaction from your peers when you raise issues like this. I have to imagine that some of those conversations must be really productive and some must be a little frustrating, and maybe there's even a lack of awareness in some of those conversations. I'm really curious about your personal experience with sitting at that table.
It's all the above.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that's for me and my lived experience is understanding that, Rome wasn't built in a day, and that there's always opportunities for progress. It's just a matter how we choose to utilize our time, energy, talents, and resources to find solutions to make things work. And so, I mean, there's tons of experiences that I've had from, I just come in with the facts and the solutions, and it's like, yeah, great. And then there are times where you still come with the facts and solutions, and people are just speaking in circles. So it's the spectrum. But I think just being resolute in the mission and the goal, not losing sight of that, keeps you steadfast, keeps you encouraged, keeps you coming back to ensure that you're able to make some impact.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective. So I have another kind of question along those same lines. I have to imagine that, there's a support sort of mechanism that has to be in place sort of like in an ongoing basis, right? For the folks that are, out there living this every day. So how do you see DNPs of color making a tangible impact on, healthcare systems, patient outcomes by providing that sort of ongoing support? We're helping, people publish, we're helping people sort of navigate the field. What does it look like? People who have been in the field for a while, the support mechanisms that you see that need to be in place for that sort of aspect of the system?
Another great question. And so when our community meets for our annual meeting, I hear a lot of the conversations of the unique needs, the unique challenges that they're experiencing. And a lot of them are because the doctoral degree allows you the opportunity to be at different places in your career and have access to certain tables, access to power, access to an expanded network. There's not a lot of diversity at those tables. And so one of the pieces is, as I mentioned before, ensuring people that that they're equipped, and then having opportunity to be able to have a group to brainstorm some ideas on how to create some change and how to make an impact in their respective community or institution. And some of the strategies that, they're baked in our mission pillars. So networking, so ensuring that we're fortifying all the different avenues that people are involved in, and making sure people have access to kind of like those handshake opportunities where they might not have it because they didn't have the network before. And then the mentorship aspect is, people say when they come to the conference, they're like, I had no idea that we had literally DNPs of color everywhere. That's kind of like our little unofficial motto. But seeing how we are in different aspects of healthcare, leadership, nursing practice, and to be able to garner inspiration and also just best practices from those individuals. And then the advocacy piece is ensuring that we're able to amplify the unique needs and also the tremendous value that this community offers. And so putting all those things together just helps to package folks to be equipped to be able to withstand and also thrive in these various places to make an impact.
Also, I've got one more for you. Just looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of your organization, of DNPs of color, and kind of more broadly, how do you see the role of nursing leadership evolving in the next few years in healthcare?
I feel like nursing, it's our time. We outnumber all health professionals combined, and we are educated on ethics and humanity and advocacy. We have a unique ability to see people in vulnerable states and move them through the process from birth, life to death. And so I really want to charge us with owning that power that we have to make some changes that we see needs to happen, and that we as nurses are uniquely positioned to be able to make happen. With DNPs of color, definitely charging with that same vein of taking hold of being the leader, being the teacher, being the mentor, being the advocate, and just holding strong to ensuring that we are meeting our goal in ultimately increasing diversity in nursing practice.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Such a wonderful mission. And last thing, one more thing, if you can, tell our listeners where they can go to learn a little bit more about DNPs of color after they finish listening to this one.
Yes, come find us on our social media networks. It's our name, DNPs of Color. We are on all the social media networks, even Pinterest. So just Google us and you'll find us.
That's fantastic. Dr. Danielle McCamey, thank you so much for joining us today. It really was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
And to our listeners, if you enjoyed the conversation, please like, share, and subscribe to help us keep growing the show. And if you'd like to hear a little bit more about Taylor Healthcare and the digital healthcare experience, you can go to taylor.com/digital-healthcare. That's our show for today. And until next time, this is Chris Civitarice wishing you health and good cheer. Thank you. Take care.
To learn more about Taylor Healthcare, please visit taylor.com/digital-healthcare. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice or services. The Digital Healthcare Experience is produced by Naomi Schwimmer. Podcast music by Nicholas Bach.